I've been involved in 7 avalanches over the last several years. In this video, I'm going to share the footage and photos that I have from each of these incidents, and hopefully we can all learn together about why these happened and what mistakes we made.
Holy cow.
Okay, I'm going to be sharing these in the order that they happened. So we're going to be starting off in 2020. This is the first avalanche that I saw in person, and I've only been skiing for 2 or 3 years at this point. Jumping into the backcountry, I was a little unprepared. I didn't have the knowledge that I needed, and I'll just let the clip speak for itself. Okay, so we had just got done skiing our line at this point, and we're just kind of on our exit right now. We're trying to do a big traverse so that our exit's going to be a little bit easier. And then we're opposed with this big gully. At the time, I wasn't concerned with this at all. It was not something that I knew to be worried about, but luckily the person that I was with knew to be a little bit concerned about this, and he proposed the idea of going one at a time, which was a very good idea. Yeah, you can kind of hear him over the wind saying, let's go one at a time. And so there he goes. Sorry for all the sniffling. And the singing, oh my. And right there, you can see he just immediately gets swept off his feet. This big wind slab just rug pull. And so immediately, concerns. He has this tree right below him, and then he has these rocks that he's about to get carried over. And so my immediate thought, luckily I knew enough to think about this, was I need to make sure I get eyes on. I need to make sure that I don't get carried in this as well.
Holy cow. Holy cow.
You can just see the ton of snow, so much snow going down. So right here, honestly, the chest cam is not the best for this. Chest cam is not the best footage in general. Unfortunately, that's all I have for this. But what I am doing right now is I'm just staying high and trying to keep eyes on as long as possible. As soon as I lose the ability to see him, I'm dropping down a little bit further and trying to find another clearing in the trees where I can see him. So you can just see I'm kind of feathering my way down, and we'll kind of speed through this section. And you can see this wind, the wind just ripping. That is the wind that loaded this slope. And you can just barely see, it's going to be really hard to see on video, but in the very bottom left corner, you can actually see my friend down at the bottom of the avalanche. Somehow he managed to stay on top. He managed to float through, and we got really lucky on this one.
Woo! You good?
Right now I'm making sure that he's okay.
Holy cow.
Cannot hear him on the GoPro, but I'm sure I could hear him in real life.
Shoot,
And then the rest of the video is just me getting down to him. Okay, so what happened here? Number one is I should have been much more knowledgeable about backcountry before I was doing anything like this. Once I watch this clip now, it's like so obvious that there is wind loading happening there. I can even see it in the snow. I can like visualize what that's feeling like. But at the time, I had no idea to be concerned about that. So wind loading was our big problem, and we should have known this. The last couple days, we had new snow, we had heavy winds, and actually, I later heard that day, a local ski resort recorded one of its record wind gusts. I think it was like 100 plus miles an hour. Something crazy. Second mistake was that we were skiing a wind-loaded terrain trap. There's this big gully that's going to funnel all the snow into the middle. It's going to pack in really deep, and it's going to kind of churn you into the bottom. And there's this big wind-loaded slope that he's skiing on and just gets swept into this terrain trap. Thankfully, everyone was okay, and we got really lucky on this one. You'll hear me say that a lot. We got lucky on all of these. So my key takeaways and lessons from this clip is, for one, it makes me cringe a lot to watch this clip. For one, my voice was a lot higher pitched, and I hate listening to my voice when I was that young. But more importantly, it is just so annoying to watch how ignorant I was. It was like, come on, man, just do better. Making sure that when I go out now that I'm doing as much as I can to be knowledgeable about what I'm doing, as well as making sure that the people I'm with are knowledgeable as well and are able to make comfortable decisions for themselves. That's really important. So that wraps up our first avalanche. Let's jump into the second one.
I am shaking so bad right now. I bet.
That's what was like, yeah. I thought I was gonna die. I thought I was gonna die. Oh my god.
Okay, Avalanche 2. This one happened almost exactly a year ago. A year and 3 days after the last one we just looked at. This one happened in 2021, and I'm still not super knowledgeable about the backcountry. I'm doing a lot of resort skiing, probably 95% resort skiing, and this incident happened on the side country. So I actually don't have photo or video of this clip. The only thing I have is an old fat map screenshot of where this happened. The interesting thing we can look at from this screenshot is that we were skiing this treed area, which is good. If you're skiing in a high avalanche danger day, you want to be sticking into the trees as much as you can. Now, this situation, there's this big meadow. I happened to ski through the meadow so I could post up at the bottom and take some photos of some buddies. But right as I was skiing, an avalanche actually triggered right at that change of slope angle. This was a big lesson for me in understanding that slope angle really does matter when it comes to avalanches. I also have a screenshot of the avalanche forecast from that day. I went back into the archives and grabbed one, and we actually had an avalanche warning down in Colorado, and we had a level 4 or high danger day. And so this was not the day to be poking around in any avalanche terrain of any kind. Okay, where did I mess up? I would say number one is that this is a crew that I had never skied with. This was my first day skiing with this athlete group, and I was just out there taking photos, and they wanted me to post up at the bottom of the meadow and take some photos as they got some deep pow turns. I would say my big mistake was just blindly following the group that I was with. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just out there. I had just rode a lift up to where we were at. We had just like sidestepped out of the resort a little bit, and now we're in the backcountry. I felt really comfortable because we just came out of the resort, and I was with this group of people that I thought were at a much higher level than myself. And so I was just blindly following them. So I'll just keep this one really short. My key takeaways from this one was learning that I really need to pay attention to the group I'm with and making sure that I trust their opinion and know that they're knowledgeable about what they're doing. Or at the very least, I need to be knowledgeable about what I'm doing. I can't just blindly trust somebody else to protect me. The second big takeaway is that the side country can and will kill you. It is just as much backcountry as anywhere else. You really need to be able to keep your guard on and pay attention to what you're seeing as you're getting out into the side country. Okay, avalanche number 3. This one happened another year later, 2022. This one I have really good headcam footage of, so we're able to really see what happened here. So I'm standing on top of my line here. I have a buddy with a snowmobile down at the bottom. He just dropped me off at the top, and now he's down at the bottom waiting, and he is out of the slide path. He's just waiting on a nice big moto that you can see at the bottom there. As I'm kind of traversing into my drop-in, I'm noticing that there's a lot of wind loading happening. I can feel that it's very slabby, and so I'm already making a plan. I'm like, okay, if this does slide, or if it doesn't even, I'm gonna try to find a little spot that I can tuck off into. Okay. So you can see I get a turn in, nothing happened, and then my second turn, just this whole slope breaks with me. This is not a super deep and it is not a super big slide, but thankfully I already had a plan and I knew how to get out of this avalanche path. And so you can see me execute that plan immediately. Looking back, you can see all the snow sliding down.
There it is.
You can even see it. There it is. Because that was like a pretty likely thing in my mind.
I kind of saw that one coming.
And then I'm just radioing down to my buddy down at the bottom, making sure that he knows that I'm okay because I tucked off into the trees. I don't want him to be thinking that I'm caught up in this slide.
Are you okay? I was looking through the camera and I just seen it.
Yeah, I'm all good. I expected that top to slide, so I was being a little slow.
Okay, so there we go. And then I actually have this second angle that you can probably see. I have this 360 camera on my pole for this run, and you can kind of see this fracture happening behind me. It's just really interesting to see that cracking, and just skiing right out of it, ready to go. So what happened here? This was just simply a small wind slab that happened at the top of my line. This was not something that would have happened if I would have dropped into the middle of the line, and it was a much more minor avalanche than most avalanches that you see. Okay, I actually went back into the archives and grabbed the old avalanche forecast from the day that we were skiing here. And I just wanted to show like what we were dealing with and give you a better idea of how the avalanche forecast actually relates to real life. So basically, as we read through this avalanche, we have a moderate day or a level 2 danger. And they're just really talking about, we had some new snow a couple days ago, and now we have a lot of wind that's creating a lot of wind slabs. You can also see it talk about avoiding wind slabs that are above any sort of terrain traps, such as cliffs, trees, or a dense gully. We can also see that there's several instances of people who triggered wind slabs recently. Overall, I actually feel pretty good about the decision making in this clip. We had somebody at the bottom ready to rescue if needed. We had a relatively clean run out. If I was to get caught in this slide, I wouldn't be carried through trees, I wouldn't be carried over a cliff or anything like that. Additionally, I dropped in with a plan. I knew that whether or not that broke, I was going to tuck off into this left shoulder, and I saw a spot that was perfect to get out of the path. So my takeaways from this. This was honestly a great lesson in getting comfortable and familiar with how wind slabs feel and understanding how much I can trust my intuition when I'm thinking something might slide. Another big part that I took away from this was more confidence in these safe travel habits. So basically, because I had a plan, I knew how to get out of there right away. I got out of there way before I needed to. I didn't have to think about anything, and I was able to escape really easily. It's really easy to drop into a line without a plan like that, but it is really, really important to have a plan for how to get out of something if something does happen. Okay, now let's jump into our next avalanche. Avalanche number 4. This is where things start to get really interesting. I'm starting to get more comfortable in the backcountry. I'm more confident in my avalanche assessment skills, and we are starting to trigger some bigger things because of that. We're starting to push into bigger terrain, and there's just more consequences happening. And this is really a great example of us stepping into that. So let's just start off with the clip. For some context, I am in that green coat. That is not a good spot to be standing in this situation. And my buddy in the red coat is about to come around the corner. So you can see right here, it's deep. There is a lot of new snow going on. But you can also see right here, he gets thrown onto his side and just a ton of moving snow.
Eyes on.
He's in the tree. He's below the tree. You see him? Yeah, he's moving.
You can listen. We're talking back and forth. This clip is honestly some great communication. We have one person on the slope who is not sliding. We have a person on the bottom who did just slide down the avalanche. And then we have 2 people posted up on a separate slope who are able to see everything and communicate what they're seeing.
He's above.
He's out. He's good.
Clear, I'm clear.
Holy shit.
Damn.
And there we pan up. You can see this big crown line, just
Look at that
huge
green
crown line. And so I'm there in the green coat, and the crown actually triggered exactly where I was standing. All that happened to me was I fell straight down just 2 feet all of a sudden. I had no idea what was happening.
Wait.
It broke.
That is all the way down.
So you can see this slab broke all the way down at the ground on a persistent weak layer. I'm going to jump to a second clip that'll just show you the crown a little bit better here. So this is from where I was standing, and you can just see this big crown line going on. You can see my backpack up there. That's where I was standing, and I fell all the way down to where I'm standing now.
Holy guacamole.
I also pulled some archive avalanche forecast out of this clip as well. We had a level 3 or a considerable day. Our biggest concerns were wind slabs. We had a lot of new snow that just fell, so just new snow sloughing and new snow storm slabs. And then we also had this persistent weak layer, which that is what we encountered. So if you read through this avalanche forecast, this avalanche forecast was that day. I read this exact wording the morning before going out for this tour. So we can basically see that these avalanches are happening not everywhere and not super frequently, but it's just enough to be really scary. He's telling us that they're most likely in steeper, rocky terrain where the snowpack is thinner, which just so happens to be exactly what we skied. So basically, this avalanche forecast predicted exactly what happened to us this day. We did not pay enough attention to our avalanche forecast readings in the morning, and we went out and skied some terrain that we definitely shouldn't have. This one would have been really easy to avoid, and I'm admittedly a little bit embarrassed about our decision making here. So what happened here? We had my buddy Nathan got carried down this very large slide on a persistent weak layer that broke all the way at the ground. I was also on slope. I was trying to film Nathan, and luckily the crown broke right below my feet and I was able to stay above the moving snow. Where did we mess up? We messed up a lot. We messed up in a lot of ways here. We, for one, didn't pay enough attention to our avalanche forecast. For two, when we dug our pit this day, we dug our pit at a much shallower aspect, kind of in a meadow down in the trees. This was a much deeper snowpack, and we did not find any instabilities that we were worried about. We knew that this new snow would be sloughing a lot, but we didn't think there would be anything other than that. The slope that we ended up skiing was a lot shallower and rockier than the spot that we dug the pit. And so we got very different results based off of what we dug the pit for and what we skied. And if we would have read the avalanche forecast a little bit better, we would have known that. Additionally, we all had a little bit of powder fever here. We wanted to get out and ski, we wanted to get some clips, and we wanted just to have a good day. And we weren't really thinking about avalanches as much as we should have. Luckily, our safe travel habits really helped us here. We had 2 people off slope able to see everything. Me and my other buddy are the ones that messed up by having 2 people on this slope and just not managing each other very well. The big problem here is that we skied in avalanche terrain immediately after a big storm with a known persistent weak layer. We honestly got really lucky here. My big lessons and takeaways from this one was really making sure everybody in the group is able to speak their mind and talk about their comfort level as they're going up. I personally had some things I was unsure of, and after the fact, everybody else was talking about things that they were a little bit more hesitant about. If we would have talked more on the slope, we could have avoided this. Additionally, this is where I learned that a much shallower snowpack like this can have a wildly different impact on how stable everything is. That is not something I had ran into previously, and this was a big lesson for me. I'm very thankful to be able to get away from this one okay and take that lesson with me. Okay, my 5th avalanche. This one happened only a month later, so apparently I didn't learn very much. And this also happened to be a very, very similar situation. We had a new storm on top of a persistent weak layer once again. And here I am out skiing, because I'm not learning. So this one is actually a remote trigger, which basically means that the avalanche actually did not happen where I was standing. The snow underneath my feet settled as I was touring up this hill, and it actually propagated from where I was standing to around the corner where the angle was a lot steeper and able to slide. So under me whoomped, but did not move because it wasn't steep enough. But around the corner where it was steeper, all that snow started moving. And so I was actually going for a sunrise mission here. And as I'm touring up, I have my headlamp on and I just hear all these trees cracking around the corner. Here's a little clip from that moment.
I think I just remote triggered all of downhill.
Townhill is the locals' name for this hill that I'm skiing.
Oh my goodness, I'm way on the looker's right shoulder. I just got a big whoomp. But I'm like in a lot of pretty dense trees. But around the corner where it's like proper townhill, I just hear a ton of trees breaking. Oh my goodness, what the fuck?
Okay, so pretty spooky. Hearing trees crack in the forest while you're walking up with a headlamp on is a terrifying situation to be in. Here's a clip from after I started skiing a little bit. I noticed that we had a lot of instabilities going on, and I was skiing just in the thickest trees that I could find. I was also stopping very frequently, checking my 3D map and figuring out the lowest slope angle I could possibly be on, as well as staying out from under any slide paths or steep slopes. But here you can see, as I'm skiing, I'm looking across a slope and I can see this other spot that remote triggered.
I triggered another slab right there.
You can just kind of see that crown line right there.
See the crown? It's crazy. So, yeah, we're avoiding this open stuff. You can actually see it slid way down there.
Can't quite see
I'm
that in the
excited.
video.
Well, I don't know if I'm excited, but I'm interested to see that whatever I cracked over there, that's where I was touring around that ridge. So something moved over there, I'm pretty sure. Can't see it yet, though. The views are pretty.
Okay, so I get done with my skiing. I get down to the bottom of this slope safely somehow. I honestly got lucky once again. I was very, very wary about my skiing, but I'm very thankful to have gotten down safely. You can see once I get to the bottom, here's a clip from the bottom looking back up.
So this is the old slide path. The crown goes
Crown
from
line going on at the top.
that side to that side, but then it keeps going.
And then it cracked
The crown goes all
across
the way over to here.
And actually right about this area is where I was touring. I was touring right on that ridge line, just on the other side of it where it's not as steep. And that is where I remote triggered. I'm not sure exactly how much I remote triggered at that moment as opposed to when I was skiing, but at some point everything broke.
Here. And it slid all of that. I might have made a new...
And then right here you can just see that kind of river of trees. There is a ton of trees, and those were all, that was what I was hearing with my headlamp in the morning. Just all of those trees cracking and funneling down the mountain.
Slide path. There's a bunch of trees down here that weren't there before. Holy cow. And that was like, so when it happened, I could hear it. I was touring on the other side of this ridge, and I felt like a slight whoomp, but I was like in some really thick trees over there. And then I heard trees cracking. I didn't know it was this much though. Holy cow. That's spooky. That's why we ski tight trees on a... I guess that's tight trees.
Here we can see this photo that I took later on with my nice camera and my nice zoomed in lens, where you can really see this whole mountain. So you can see on the right side in those dense trees, that's where I was standing when I remote triggered the right slide path. And then the left slide path, I'm not actually sure at what point that triggered. That either triggered at the same time as the first one or as I was skiing down. When I skied down on the left side. I was being very picky about staying on the lowest slope angle I could, and I was able to keep it under 35 degrees the whole way down. Honestly, I would not have done this again. This is not a tour that I would repeat, and I'm very thankful to have made it back okay. I pulled our avalanche forecast from that day for us to look at. So basically, as we read this forecast, we can see that we're having an unusual winter where things are getting really unstable even after just a little bit of new snow. That means that our persistent weak layer that we're having is not really settling down. It's not really healing very well, and very small new loads are waking that back up. You can also see that just recently, 3 to 6 days ago, it says there was a massive avalanche in the local area. Basically, he ends this off by saying you should really only be skiing low angle avalanche terrain if you can. Avalanches are running deep, wide, destructive, and unsurvivable. That is not something you want to be reading in the morning. So avalanche danger this day was considerable, level 3, and this avalanche forecast is a pretty spooky one to read. So what happened here? This was a remote trigger on a persistent weak layer, largely because of a new snow load. I can't guarantee that nothing would have happened if there wasn't that new snow, but I believe that all this new snow from that night before is what caused this, or at least a large part of why it happened. So where did I mess up? For one, I should have learned from our last one. Our last avalanche was also a persistent weak layer failure, largely because of new snow. So one of my big mistakes was on my way up, as I was touring, I was noticing there was way more new snow than I was expecting. I was expecting a nice dusting of like 2 more inches on top of what we had, and instead, as I was touring, I was encountering a foot or more of new snow. That was way more of the snow than I was going out there expecting, and that should have been a huge red flag as I was walking up. Additionally, familiarity with this zone made me very comfortable. I just skied this face 2 days prior before any new snow happened, and I was feeling very comfortable because of that. Another thing that I messed up on is I was pushing my switchbacks on my skin track further than I should have, and further than I normally do. When I tour up here, I have a very set way that I set my skin track that I know will be safe, and on this day, I was just pushing it further than I should have. And something that still spooks me to this day is that a small part of my skin track was actually taken out by this remote trigger. If I would have remote triggered that while I was in that slide path, that would have been really bad. So my lessons and takeaways from this avalanche. Once again, I got to relearn this lesson, thankfully, basically for free, that I really need to be wary of new snow on a snowpack with a persistent weak layer. That is a very dangerous situation, and you need to be really conscious about what you're skiing on that day. The other big lesson for me was really getting into the habit of safe travel plans. My switchback that cut into the avalanche path has really scared me. And now I'm much more conscious about where I'm cutting my skin track, and I do my best to make it a habit to travel safely, even when I don't necessarily feel like I need to. Basically, safe travel habits are vital to become a habit, not just something you do when you think about it. Avalanche number 6. This avalanche is a little more interesting to me. This avalanche was triggered by a friend, and he was the second one to drop into this line. I had already skied the line, and then when he dropped in, he triggered a slide. Let's watch the clip.
Whew.
So you can see this is a tight, rocky couloir. Not somewhere you want something to go wrong. And you can just see like the ground just sweeps out from under him basically. And here, if you look at this second angle, you can see this crown line up here above him. And just that big hard slab all slides down. Luckily he was able to tuck off and had enough speed to get out of the slide path.
Was that a slab? No, it slapped. That was an avalanche. Look at that slab.
So luckily in this situation, I had already tucked off into a safe area that was not in the run out of this couloir. So I was both ready to get Ben if anything happened to him, and I was not going to get carried away by his avalanche path. This was actually a safe travel habit. I did not think anything was going to happen here, and I just kind of did that out of habit. So I'm learning. This was actually a very interesting one, and I don't actually feel like I fully understand what happened here. We had a very, very hard slab that had formed at the top of this gully. It was only at the top, and I believe it was either from wind loading or it was just from snow falling off of these cliffs and loading into that one section. The other really interesting part about what happened here is that it fractured on the second drop, not the first. I had already skied this couloir by the time Ben had dropped in, and somehow Ben was the one that triggered it. Where did I mess up? This was a really tough situation. I think that in general, we did pretty good for what we were up against, but really, if we wanted to be safe, we should not have done this. If you guys have any ideas on what I could have done better in this clip or any of the others, I would love to hear them down in the comments. So my key takeaways and lessons from this moment. For one, I really learned that you need to be very wary of when the snow gets suddenly just rock solid. That is a very good sign that there's a very slabby situation happening, and I was actually a little bit concerned when I was standing there about to drop in about it, but I was pushing down with my pole and I couldn't find any weaker layers going on. In general, I believe this was a very unlikely situation, but it could have been very bad, and we got pretty lucky once again. My 7th and most recent avalanche. This one happened this season about 2 weeks ago, actually. Let's check out the clip and see what happened.
Oh, it's gone. It's gone. It's gone.
You can see right there, just this huge fracture way in front of me. Not super far behind me, but all around me.
Oh, dude, that's not good.
You can see I just immediately, I see that everything's cracking, and I am going as fast as I can to get out of that before the snow speeds up. Here, let's check out the head cam. So I make a couple turns. And then right there, you can just see the whole world around me just cracks. It's crazy. That was a crazy visual to experience. And I just straight line out of there. I make a nice right turn to get out of the avalanche path. And I'm just carrying my speed until I get out of the way. So what happened here? This was after a really long day of touring. We had actually boot packed up this face earlier in the day at around 10 in the morning, and it was a nice, beautiful powder field, super light, fluffy snow everywhere, and we were really excited. Now, our plan for this day was to hike up one ridge, ski down the backside, hike up another ridge, and then come back. So we had a really long day ahead of us, and by the time we got back to this zone that we had boot packed up, the wind had destroyed it. The top was pretty miserable skiing, and the bottom, as you can see, was all wind slabs. This was the largest one out of the group, but all three of us ended up with some size of wind slab trigger. So basically, that light fluffy snow that we had in the morning had gotten picked up, transported by the wind, and loaded pretty heavily onto the lower sections of the mountain. Light fluffy snow in the morning and heavy wind all day is generally a pretty bad sign. Where did we mess up here? So I was actually the last person to drop in the group. Our first drop was very, very wary of wind slabs. We knew that they were very likely, and our first person to drop was being very, very careful about them. Our second drop, likewise, he was ready. He knew that if anything fractured, he was ready to go straight down the mountain. We knew that we had a pretty open run out with low consequence terrain if anyone was to get caught up, and we were always ready to go down and get somebody if needed. So when I dropped into this, I knew that a fracture was actually pretty likely. So you can actually see I start straight lining before anything even fractures. In general, I would say that we handled this relatively well. This was definitely a situation where knowledge is power. We kind of knew what we were up against. We knew that this was relatively low consequence, and we were playing around with the dragon a little bit. This is not something I'd recommend to most people. This day I was with a group that I trusted a lot, and I knew that everybody was very capable at both rescue and skiing so that everybody could get out of there safely. I also knew that the wind slabs that we were dealing with this day were relatively thin. As you can see in the fracture, we're not breaking anything deeper than 6 inches. So in general, I'm pretty happy with how we dealt with this. We kind of had to ski some of this terrain. There wasn't really any other way down, and we just picked the safest way down with the lowest consequences, and we just went for it. My key takeaway from this situation was that really knowing and understanding how weather is affecting your snow gives you a lot of power over your decision making. We kind of knew what to be on the lookout for on this day, and if we didn't know that, this would have been a lot more scary. Okay, I'll keep our conclusion short and sweet because you guys just stuck around with a lot of talking here. But I hope that you found this interesting and were able to learn a little bit from seeing some of these real world avalanches. It's definitely a little bit vulnerable to be putting out all of my mistakes out on the internet for people to be judging and people to be critiquing my decision making. How I see it is that I made mistakes here. I'm willing to admit that, and I hope that you can learn from my mistakes. So in general, I'm very thankful to be alive. I'm very thankful to have made it out of these safely, and I really understand that we are playing with fire out here. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you learned something, and I will see you on the next one.